Well, I would like to welcome everybody to our North Country Live Summer Series. We are excited to have Jerry Manor returning to present credit scores and understanding your credit with us this evening. And it sounds like a pretty informative presentation, so we're really looking forward to that. Without further ado, Jerry, I'm going to head it on over to you. One thing I would ask, though, is everyone could keep their microphones muted if you're not talking. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat. And if it's something that Marissa feels that we have a question that she wants answered right away, we can interrupt. If not, we'll have plenty of time at the end to answer everyone's questions. So without further ado, Jerry, it's all yours.
Well, thank you very much, Selena, and welcome back, everybody, or welcome to the program. Today we're going to talk about credit reports, credit scores, interest, things like that, because let's face it, this is something that is extremely important, and it's something that's going to affect your life. It really does. It affects your finances completely. So it's something that many people have no clue about how it works. Credit reports, they're a little bit, kind of mysterious and things like that. But certainly it's not that complicated once you think about it. And again, we're going to try to give you some information you can use. Number one, to understand how the credit reports work, understand how the credit reports become a credit score, and how that credit score can affect you. We'll also talk about a few things that you can do to perhaps, first of all, establish a credit report, or if you have a credit report you're not happy with, maybe to improve it a little bit, because it's really, really important to have a good credit report. Well, I'm going to share my screen here, and let's see here. I want this one here, I believe. Okay. We'll see if this works. And it does. Okay. First of all, when we talk about credit reports, a credit report basically is information about you. And the credit reports, let me see if I'm on the right page here. Well, this isn't going to work, is it? Let's try this again. Now I'm stuck. All right, hold on, guys. We'll try this one more time. All right, and okay. Now I think we're going to get it to work. Okay, from the beginning, it's a good place to start, right? Okay, and please bear with me here. Okay, well, anyway, here we go. Credit reports and credit scores. And again, my name is Jerry Manor. I'm from CCOM. CCOM is a credit union with locations in Messina, which is where I am right now in my office on the second floor. We're also in Potsdam. And you want, okay, I can do that. Got it. We're in Potsdam, Malone, Canton, Ogdensburg, Plattsburgh. And our newest branch is in South Burlington, Vermont. So I think, Marissa, I appreciate your helping me with this. Let's see if you can get it to work. No? Okay. Well, that's okay. There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about, yeah, there we go. It's working now. Thanks. Okay, we're going to talk about the credit bureaus, first of all, because the credit bureaus are the organizations that determine your credit report. And there are three major credit bureaus. There's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And all three are important because different financial institutions use different companies. So some use Equifax, some use Experian, some use TransUnion. Some of them use all three. So it's important that you know what's in your credit report from each of the three bureaus. Now, there are also some local credit bureaus that do some local work, but these are the three most important. And in order to take a look at your credit report, you can take a look at it free of charge once per year by going to the website, annualcreditreport.com. That is a free website that is set up by the government, and you can go there and get your report free of charge once per year. If you're not happy going online, you can call. That's the number you see on the screen there, the 877-322-8228. But it's really easy to go online and get your score. What happens when you go to annualcreditreport.com, they will direct you to each of the 3 credit bureaus, okay? And then you can decide, well, what do I want to do with it? Do I want to download all 3? Do I want to look at all 3? What do I want to do? Or because you're allowed to do it once per year free of charge, you can split it up and maybe do one every 4 months or one every 3 months. So whatever you do, you should definitely take a look at your credit reports, because here's the reason. Because about 25 to 30% of credit reports have errors in them. Okay, there are mistakes, and these mistakes can hurt you. So you want to take a look at your credit report and see that it's accurate. Make sure that the information on your credit report is accurate. And if it's not, what you want to do is you want to, basically dispute the wrong information. Now, each of the websites, and each of these companies have a website that they will direct you to. Each of the website has a procedure that you can follow to dispute erroneous information on your credit report. And the credit bureaus are required by law to investigate. So what you need to do is you have to have some sort of evidence, and you do have to file in writing, but you can dispute the bad information on your credit bureau, which can help you improve your credit report. So what's in a credit report? Well, lots of information in a credit report. All kinds of identifying information about you, okay? There's all kinds of personal information, what your name is, what previous names you've had. Some people change their name. That's in there. Where you live, all kinds of different information about you. And that's why when they have a breach, it's very, very important, like there was a couple of years ago, because there's a lot of information. Your social security number is there, many, many different types of information. Also on your credit report, what are called trade lines. Basically what those are loans. Okay, so that car loan you had 10 years ago, that's on your credit report. That mortgage you have is on your credit report. The credit card you have on your credit report. So all your so-called trade lines, loans that you have with various financial institutions, those loans are on your credit report. Okay, so you want to make sure those are accurate. And also what's on there is how you pay those loans. In other words, do you always pay on time? And let me say right now, that's a really, really important thing to do. Pay your loans on time, because if you don't, you can hurt your credit report. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, so the trade lines are there. Also, you have public records and collections. So if somebody or some organization or the government has a lien against you for not paying your taxes or whatever else, that's going to show up on your credit report. If you have loans that are in collection, in other words, you didn't pay those loans, what happens, the person that gave you the loan or the organization that gave you the loan will send them to a collection agency, and those will show up on your credit report. The other thing, inquiries. What do I mean by inquiries? Well, every time you apply for credit, that generates an inquiry, okay? And they show up for the past 2 years. And it's not a good idea to apply for a lot of credit all at once, because that affects your credit report. And those inquiries stay on your report for 2 years. So again, identifying information about you, trade lines, loans that you've had, public records and collections, that's for when you don't pay or you owe somebody, and of course, inquiries for when you apply for credit. Those are the major bits of information that you find on a credit report. But I highly recommend that you go to annualcreditreport.com and download your reports and take a look at them. Pretty interesting reading. And of course, if you've been around a long time like I have, your credit report is fairly thick, a lot of pages, because let's face it, I've been borrowing money since the 1970s. So a lot of information there. And that actually can help your credit report because there's a lot of record to look at. So again, that's what you can find in a credit report. So now a credit report is different from a credit score, okay? The credit report is all that information we just talked about. The credit score is a number that comes from all that information. Now, it's based on the analysis of the credit files. And basically, the number can kind of tell, somebody who might be thinking about lending money to you if you're credit worthy. Now, the credit score is based on a formula, and the formula is pretty much known as your FICO score. Now, FICO stands for Fair Isaac and Company. That's the company that came up with this analysis model that determines how creditworthy you are based on all that information in your credit file. Your credit score comes from the credit file, and it runs anywhere from 300 to 850. Now, the FICO score is the one that most banks and credit unions and other financial organizations use to determine your creditworthiness, okay? But there are other scores out there. Insurance companies use a variation of the FICO score, and some of those websites that you can go on, like Credit Karma and Credit Sesame and Free Credit, whatever they are, they use different score that can be called a Vantage score. So again, you may see different scores based on what model is used, and the FICO is the one you really want to be concerned with because that's the score that banks and credit unions use to determine your credit worthiness. So again, the credit score number, anywhere from 300 to 850, and again, it is based on the information that applies, or is found rather, in your credit report. So that just goes to show you how very, very important it is to have the right information in that credit report. So what makes up the score? Now, this is kind of generalized here because it's kind of a well-kept secret exactly how the credit scoring model works. Because think of it this way, the company that came up with this and the credit bureaus make money every time somebody pulls your credit report. So they don't want the information out there in too much detail, because then maybe you wouldn't need it anymore. So anyway, you get back to what makes up the score. Well, the most important part of your credit report and credit score is payment history. So what do I mean by payment history? Well, how do you pay your loans? Are you always on time? Are you late once in a while? What I mean by late, in the scoring model, normally it's 30 days delinquent. So if your payment's due on the 1st, after the 30th or the 31st, it becomes 30 days delinquent, and that shows up on your credit report. Less than that, say if you're 5 days late, it's probably not going to affect anything. If you're 10 days late normally, then you'll start generating a late payment. And you don't want to do that either, because a late fee is like throwing money away. So always pay your loans on time and make sure that you do that. That'll help your credit report and save you money in the long run. So 35%, the biggest part of your credit report, is payment history. Now, part of that payment history is how you pay loans, but another part of that payment history is the bad stuff from the past. In other words, do you have any collections on your account? Have you not paid a Verizon bill from 5 years ago? That's going to show up on your credit report because those collection agencies report to the credit bureaus. So again, you want to make sure that you pay your bills on time and things don't go into collection, because again, 35% of your score is determined by your payment history. So make sure that you pay those bills on time and make sure that everything is accurate. The next most important part of your credit report and credit score is something called capacity, or you could call it credit utilization. Basically, it has to do with credit cards. And of course, you all know how credit cards work. You get a credit card, and along with that credit card, you get a credit line. So you can charge up to a certain amount. So what you want to do is make sure that you don't max out your credit cards, because that hurts your credit score, okay? And rule of thumb, if you can keep your credit utilization to around 25 to 30%, you're going to be okay as far as your credit report is concerned. But if you start getting over that 30% mark, then it's going to negatively affect your credit score. So again, credit cards, they're a great tool. I love credit cards, use mine all the time, but it's really, really important not to get a lot on it, not to go up near, maxing it out, because that's definitely going to hurt your credit report. Now, if you have more than one credit card, basically what happens is they kind of mix them together. So in other words, if you have one credit card with a $5,000 limit and one with a $10,000 limit, your total limit is $15,000. So if you stay below 30% of that, even if it's on one card, you should be okay. So again, use credit cards, use them wisely. 15% is what we call length of credit. In other words, how long have you been using credit? If you're just getting into the game, that doesn't help your score too much. If you're an old guy like me, hey, I've been around a long time. I've been using credit a long time. So that 15% really helps my credit score. Now, 10% is what we call recent debt accumulation. So in other words, if you've been building up a lot of debt in the past short period of time, that can affect your credit score negatively, okay? So you shouldn't take on a lot of debt all at the same time. Now, what I'm not talking about, if you take out a mortgage, that may seem like a lot of debt to you, but I'm talking about like 4 or 5 different credit cards or, things like that where you're taking on debt quickly. And that has to do with the inquiry part that I was mentioning before. Every time you apply for credit, it is a little ding against your credit score. Now, if you only apply, for one credit card, it might be a couple of points. It's not going to make much of a difference. But if you're applying for 10 different credit cards at once, that's definitely going to hurt your credit score, okay? So again, you want to make sure that you don't apply for a lot of credit. And if you're thinking about going and applying for a mortgage, and it's one of those things that it's important to think about everything involved, including what your credit score is. So it's not a good idea if in the next period of time, 5-6 months or whatever, you're going to apply for a mortgage or anything big like that you start applying for other things before that, because that is going to affect your credit report. And we'll tell you why that's important in just a few moments. So again, recent debt accumulation, applying for a lot of loans, that hurts your credit report. Now, just an aside on that, nowadays, when you go shopping for a car, what happens? You go into a dealership, they all want you to finance the car through them, so they are going to pull your credit report. So if you're a smart car shopper, you're going to go to a lot of different dealers, right, to make sure that you get the best deal. Well, they're all going to want to pull your credit report. So does that hurt you? Well, actually, they've changed that not too long ago. So instead of considered a bunch of different credit pulls, what that is one. So if you're shopping around for a car, all the car dealership pulls in 1 month are considered one. So it's not going to hurt your credit. Same thing if you're shopping around for a mortgage, it's not going to hurt your credit. But if you go out and apply for 10 different credit cards, that's definitely going to hurt your credit. Now, the final part of it is mix of credit. What I mean by that is there are 2 types of credit. There is installment credit, which is like a car loan or a mortgage. In other words, you buy a certain amount or you borrow a certain amount of money and then you pay it off in equal installments. It's a car loan, mortgage, things like that, a personal loan. That's an installment loan. Revolving loan is a credit card or a line of credit, okay? So, for instance, with a credit card, you can use it, go out and buy something, pay part of it off, use it again, and you can revolve the debt. Your credit report likes to see you use both types of credit. So again, exactly how much of each and of the other, hard to say. But if you keep an eye on your credit report and make sure that everything is accurate and you do make your payments on time, don't max out your credit cards, don't take on a lot of debt at once, and have a nice mixture of credit, you're going to have a good credit report, okay? Makes sense to everybody? I hope so. So just to give you a little idea of the FICO scoring model, this will give you some, idea of what the points work out. So say, for instance, your payment history. If you have no public records, that's worth 75 points on your credit report. But if it's, recently, it hurts you. Same thing for average balance if you don't have any revolving trades. So each of the points are, depends on, what different things are in your credit report as to what the points are. But again, this is just an average, and it really doesn't tell you too much. What you have to do is you have to work your financial life to make sure that you don't do the things I just talked about, that you don't miss payments, that you don't max out your credit cards, that you make sure you have a good mix of credit if you have credit. So again, that's the other thing to remember about your credit report. You kind of got to have credit to have a good credit report. And I know there's some people out there that don't believe in credit, and it's tough not having a good credit report, because not only does it affect your ability to get loans, but it also affects a lot of other things. Say, for instance, you have a poor credit report and a bad credit score, low credit score, and you want to, get a cell phone, a Verizon cell phone, or maybe hook up electricity at your new apartment. Well, what's going to happen is, because you have a poor credit report, the company's going to want a deposit from you. And that deposit is money that sits in their account that could be in your pocket. So it's really, really important to maintain a good credit report. So if you're just getting started, how do you establish credit? And you might want to pass this along your students out there, for the new credit people out there. One of the quickest and easiest ways to start establishing credit is to become an authorized user on somebody else's credit card. Okay, I did this for my kids. I put their names on my credit card as an authorized user, and they got credit for my credit. Okay, now the beauty of this technique is you don't have to give them access to your credit card. You can put their name on it as an authorized user, but you don't have to let them use it. Okay, so that'll help them start to establish credit. Another way is a cosigner. In many cases, new credit people have to have a cosigner, because we want to make sure that the loan gets paid, obviously, and they're going to have a cosigner to be able to get the loan. So the thing to remember about doing that, though, is if the person you cosign for doesn't pay, you are responsible. That's right, you're responsible, and you have to, make good on the loan. Otherwise, it'll ding your credit, okay? Other ways: secured credit cards and loans. In other words, you put up the money up front in a savings account, you secure the credit card, you secure the loan, and then after doing that for a little while, like the secured credit card will become a regular credit card after a year. And speaking of credit cards are really the quickest way to establish credit and also to improve your credit, because it's also the quickest way to mess it up. But again, using a credit card wisely is such a good way to go, because it helps build your credit, it helps improve your credit score, and really, if you have a good credit card with rewards, you can actually make some money doing it. But the key to a credit card, of course, is to not build up a lot of, using your limit. In other words, you don't want to max it out, okay? Because what happens then is it causes your credit score to go down because of the capacity part of the credit utilization. So again, if you're going to use a credit card, what you want to do is make sure that the line is big enough so that you don't have to go above 30%. 30% is a good rule of thumb. So in other words, like the way I work is I use my credit card for everything, for the rewards, but I always make sure I have a big credit line so I don't go above 30%. And again, that'll keep your credit score up there. Of course, student loans, you get student loans without really having any credit, but it's how you start paying them back that helps you build credit. Auto loans, obviously, because an auto loan is often easier to get because there's some collateral, the auto. So again, that's good. Now, there's also a way to have utility payments affect your credit report. Now, normally it doesn't work that way. In the payment section of your credit report, the utilities don't normally report to the credit bureaus. Now, if you don't pay your bill, if you don't pay your electricity bill, they'll send it to collection, and that will be reported on your credit bureau. So the derogatory information goes on, but your good payment history doesn't. So if you're trying to establish credit or improve your credit, you can use one of these websites. And what they do is they'll keep track of your payments on time and report them to the credit bureau for you. I believe there's a small fee involved. There's a small fee involved in almost anything. But that will help you. If you have nothing else, that you can use to build your credit reports. So again, establishing credit is so important. Talk to your youngsters out there, get them started. Make them an authorized user on your credit card, because if you have good credit, it will help their credit. Or if you have to co-sign, just make sure that you keep track of it, because if they don't pay, you're going to get hurt. But, a lot of these things can help. Store credit cards. Now, I don't like store credit cards because the interest rates are normally very high. They can be up to like, 36% or some ridiculous amount like that. But again, a store credit card works like any other credit card. If you pay it off in full by the due date, you don't pay any interest. And normally, as long as you have a job and can fog a mirror, you can get a store credit card. But again, be careful when you're out there. And of course, nobody's shopping much right now, and the malls are just getting open. But every department store you go into wants you to take their card so you get 10% off, right? Well, that's fine, but don't do it a lot. In other words, you don't want to have a lot of inquiries all at the same time because you're applying for all these different credit cards. But having one and using it and paying it off in full, that's a good way to build credit. So some great ways to build credit. Now, if you have bad credit, and again, you want to look at your credit reports to see if your credit is bad. And of course, you want to know that before you go in and apply for a loan, right? Because if you have a bad credit report, it can, affect your ability to get a loan. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you're not going to get a loan, okay? Because, we try at CCOM to help everybody we can. And most credit unions and banks will lend to you even if your credit report's not that great. But here's the deal. Your credit score affects your interest rate, okay? It's not, it's really kind of scary when you think about it, because if you have great credit, you're going to pay the lowest interest rate on loans. If you have bad credit, you're going to be paying the highest interest rate on loans. And just to give you an example, say for instance, you're going to take out a car loan for $20,000, okay? $20,000, you could probably buy a pretty good used car. So if you have good credit, your interest rate will be 3 or 4 or 5% depending. And if you have bad credit, it's going to be up around 15 or 17%, okay? So what's the difference over a 5-year loan? Well, it's almost $200 a month in car payment and about $5,000 or $6,000 more interest over the course of the loan. Because remember, you guys know how interest works, right? The interest formula, interest equals principal times rate times time. So those are the 3 factors. So the amount of interest you pay is determined by, number 1, the amount of money you borrow. Number 2, the interest rate, and that's what we're talking about now, and also by the length of the contract. So if your interest rate is higher, you're going to pay more interest. And of course, over a 5-year loan, it's going to be a certain amount. But think about this. What about a 30-year mortgage? If you have a bad credit report and a poor credit score, and you're paying 2, 3, 4% more over 30 years, that's going to result in quite a lot of money going out of your pocket. So that's why it's really important to, number 1, know what's in your credit report, and then number 2, make sure that you do everything you can to make sure it's good. So again, you want to check your report. If you find an error, dispute it. Okay, past due accounts. That's where it can really hurt you as well. Accounts you haven't paid, take a look at them. But here's the thing, you can negotiate with the creditors. And many times they're willing to take less to, give you a paid in full report. So you want to talk to them. And again, be nice to them, because they don't have to do anything for you, but they might. See, the way it works is the debt that's bad is purchased by collection agencies, usually for pennies on the dollar. So say you owe $500 to Verizon from 4 or 5 years ago, but the collection agency bought it for $100. So they might settle for a lot less than the 500. Can't hurt to ask, right? But again, you want to make sure that you tackle those past due accounts. But while you're doing that, don't neglect what you've got to pay now. In other words, your current car payment, make sure you pay that on time. Make sure you pay the other accounts on time. Charge-off accounts, again, you can take a look at that. But the thing to remember, as time goes by, the derogatory information gets less important. And the other thing you can do is decrease your credit utilization. You know what I mean by that? Yep, pay down your credit card. That's right. Make sure you do that. You know, never have any more on that credit card. And here's a little technique for you. You know, like I said, if you have a credit card, you know, the way it works is you go out and you buy something, then you get a statement, and you have until a certain date to make that payment. You can either pay the minimum amount anywhere up to the total amount. Well, the good thing to do is pay the total amount. But here's an even better thing to do. You don't have to wait until the due date. You can pay early. So maybe you want to pay half of it when you first get the statement, and then the second half by the due date. But again, that keeps your credit utilization low. And of course, getting another loan can help as well because you start to establish a payment history. Okay. So a lot of ways to fix it. But again, you have to take a look at what's there to know what you need to fix. And in some cases, you'll take a look at your credit report and think there's something there. It's not. So you don't have to worry about it. But again, you want to take a look at all three because different creditors report to different credit bureaus. Now, as far as your credit score, when you look at that credit report from annualcreditreport.com, you do not get a credit score, okay? It's not included. But what you can do is many credit cards out there offer your FICO score as part of what they give you for having their credit card. That's one way to get it free. Or if you really want it, don't have any other way, you can actually pay for it. It's not that expensive. And you just go to the website, myfico.com, and you can get your credit score that way. But again, the worst thing you can do is ignore it because it is going to cost you. And there's so many other things that bad credit can hurt. Like I said, you're going to, have to pay, money up front if you want to get a utility account. You have to pay that deposit. There's a lot of things that it'll cost you extra if you had bad credit. And again, it's harder to get a loan if you have bad credit. So again, take a look at what's on your report. Do the things that are necessary to repair it, and hopefully you can, make things as good as they can be. So again, if you look at it, good credit score, for us at CCOM, if you're above 730, you're considered A plus credit. Okay. So, you can be 800 or 850. I have a couple of friends who they make it their mission to be as high as they can, up way above 800. It doesn't matter that much as long as you're above the mid 700s, you're in pretty darn good shape. But for more information, these resources are great. Of course, annualcreditreport.com. The FTC has lots of information on credit reports and credit scores and resources on what you can do to fix your credit report. Of course, there are the three credit bureaus and the myfico.com. So those are good resources to find information on what you want to do. Okay, so let me get back out of this and see if I can, okay. I am looking at the chat now. If anybody has any questions, you are more than welcome to type it in right now, and I'll do my best to answer. How about you, Selena? Any questions? Oops.
Actually, I do. So the authorization user, maybe I'm not saying that right, where you said is a great thing to do for your kids.
Yes.
And you said, they can, so my question is, how old can your kids be? My daughter and son-in-law have come out of college with a ton of student loans from their grad schools, and they're on their own. They have their own house and such. But I was thinking to myself, that probably would have been pretty nice for me to do had I known that that was even something. Or is that something that you do for kids or people that don't have any credit?
Well, no, it can help anybody. Once they're 18 years old, they're allowed to actually have a contract on their own and get credit. So having their name on as an authorized user will help them build credit because that credit card is listed under their name as well. Because even though you may not give them access to it, You're certainly they're able to use that as, it goes on their report. So it begins to affect it in a positive way. Now that's assuming you're good with credit. And I am assuming that. You're good with credit, right, Selena?
I'm actually very good with credit.
Okay. And I've got a black screen here. I can't see anything. So, oh, wait a minute.
This was really, really informative. I learned so much. I really didn't know how the world of credit worked, so it was really wonderful. How about others? Do we have anyone else out there with a credit question for Jerry? Please feel free to either chat it, or if you'd like to just turn on your mic. Anthony, do you have a question? Please just go right ahead and turn your mic on and talk if you prefer.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, Anthony, how are you?
I'm doing great. I always like to talk rather than type.
Me too. You probably noticed that.
Yeah. So I did send in a message, and I'm watching this for my mom. My mom has, millions of dollars at the bank. She's always paid her bills on time. Owns her houses, whatever. When my dad died, all her credit cards were canceled immediately.
Boy, I'm glad you brought that up, Anthony. And that is
and then it got even worse when she was finally, the bank that she banks with finally helped her get a credit card, but it has like $1,000 limit. She can't even pay her monthly bills with it, and it can't be increased. And it's really, it's ridiculous. And I don't really know how to help her. I guess you gave something. Maybe she has to get a loan or something. I don't know, but it seems insane that she's worth millions and can't get a credit card and always pays her bills and can't get a credit card with any kind of,
I'm making the assumption that everything was in your dad's name.
No, it was not.
Really?
They were her credit cards. She was the financial manager, paid the bills. They had all accounts had both their names on it, but it has something to do with the male, female,
Yeah.
the world. It's like, she's a non-entity.
Yeah. And
that's more than him too.
That's a really good point to make, especially for the young people out there. You're in a relationship and, everybody is different. Okay. Now I remember way back when I got married to my wife, we decided how, we're talking about how are we going to handle our finances? Because we both, I was in my late 20s when I got married, and as was my wife. So we've been on our own for, 10 years or so. And we both had established, credit and everything. But we decided, we tried the separate, didn't work. So we're together. But we each maintain our own separate accounts for certain things, just to make sure if something happens to one or the other of us, the other one has a credit history. But what you're seeing there, I think, Anthony, is a holdover from the old days when, because the way things were back in the day, the male usually handled all the finances and the woman's name wasn't on anything. So, it's going to take a little bit of time. But yeah, she's going to have to probably get a loan and work it back up. But she
won't get a loan. She pays everything in cash.
Cash. Yeah, but
she pays taxes. She pays, utility bills. I guess that one thing was that you did mention paying those couple companies for reporting your utility bill payments.
Right. That's something fairly because in
first to paying someone to do that. It just. Why, you pay money to increase your credit. Why not just keep the money in?
Yeah. And, it depends where in life you are, too. Chances are your mom's not going to take out a lot of loans anytime in the future, right?
No, she just would like a credit card that could cover her monthly expenses and then pay
here's
the end of the month rather than having to write checks all the time. Here's
a suggestion for you, Anthony. Why don't you have her apply for a secured credit card?
Okay, there we go.
Because
I would be the
So basically how this works is she would set aside a certain amount of money. So she wants a credit card with a $30,000 limit. okay, or whatever. I'm just pulling that number
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
So she puts that amount in a savings account that backs that credit card. So she uses the card as she's supposed to for a year, it'll become a regular credit card. That's probably the quickest solution for you.
Yeah, yeah. That would sound like it would work because she wouldn't want to be, she did try, my other brothers got credit cards for her, but they were the primary
Right.
applicant, and that's not her credit card. It's someone, it's one of her kids' credit cards, and so that didn't work out. And she just wants her own credit card with limits, and so a secured credit card. Okay, there's the answer right there.
Okay.
With that, whatever she wants on it, she plunks the money in.
Yeah.
Savings account, and that's the end of it.
And see what the bank is thinking is, she's an elderly person and if she gets a big credit card, runs up a bill and passes away, who's going to pay it? But see, the thing is she has the resources to back it up. So I think if you talk to the bank about that, they'll be able to help.
Yeah. Well, and of course, this way you have to tell them what you want because,
yep.
She did talk about increasing the credit rating, but whoever they use, it's really not the bank's credit card. Whatever agents they use to put their bank on,
right,
won't have anything to do with increasing her. It's out of the local branch's hands. Basically, is the story there.
Well, give that a try. If it doesn't work, back out to me, and we'll see if we can find another solution.
All right, great. Thank you very much for your help.
Hey, Anthony, this is Russ Kenyon. Nice to see you, by the way.
Hi.
You can also do those Christmas loans that are like $1,000 or $2,000 or less that are for like a year, and just take out a really small loan and just make payments on it. And that could help. I don't know if she would do that.
Even if she just buys groceries with it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she doesn't buy many of those either.
Yeah, that's a good point, Russ, because, just having a loan and making payments on it, and that's a good way to get started if you're just getting started. You can get a secured loan and put $1,000 in a savings account and then make payments on the $1,000. That's one way to do it. I prefer, though, using your credit card because it's not going to cost you anything if you pay it off in full. Whereas if you're doing a secured loan, you do have to pay interest.
Yeah, I don't think a loan would be palatable.
But these are really helpful. I wanted to also say, Jerry, that there are two questions. Regina has a question, and so does Don Jones. So Regina, if you want to ask your question. Oops, I'm sorry. Can you hear me, Jerry?
I can.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have two questions. I think I'm not sure if I unmuted myself when I asked. We have a question from Regina, and we also have a question from Don Jones. Regina, do you want to unmute yourself so you can ask the question? Or if not, I can read it.
Okay, why don't you read it? Because I can't see the questions right now for some reason.
Okay. So Regina asked, let me see here. It says, how does incarceration affect a person's credit history separate from the actual credit itself? The fact that they were incarcerated. She teaches in a prison for North Country.
Yeah, that's a good question. And in and of itself, it doesn't really affect the credit report unless the loans and whatnot, if there are loans that are not getting paid. It's interesting, your credit report does not take into account what your salary is. It doesn't care how much money you make. It doesn't care what your job is, although it will be on your report. It doesn't affect your score. What does affect your score is how much, how you pay your bills. So even if you're incarcerated, if you're not, if you don't have bills that are in collection, if you don't have bills you're not paying, it's not going to hurt. What will happen, though, is, obviously, if you don't have anything going on, your credit will get lower and lower because nothing is happening. So once you get out, you'll have to do those things to start building it up again. But being incarcerated in and of itself doesn't affect it.
Thank you. I hope that was helpful for you, Regina. I know that you deal with so many of the students that are in the Second Chance Pell, so maybe that will be good information to pass along to them. Thanks for that question. We have a question from Don Jones. Don, do you want to unmute, or would you like me to read it? Either way. You know, I'll go ahead and just read it. Don asked the question, if credit has been established in life, is it better to try to pay for items with cash versus accumulating debt, or does that hurt your credit score?
Oh, that's a good question too. Your credit score likes to see you use credit, okay? On the other hand, if you can pay cash, it's always better to pay cash. So that's kind of a conundrum then, isn't it? Because you want to pay cash, you don't want to pay interest, you don't want to accumulate debt. But on the other hand, you want to keep that credit score in good shape. So again, the easiest way to do that is using a credit card, okay? When you use a credit card, you're using credit, okay? Now, granted, it's revolving debt. If you don't have any installment debt, your mortgage is paid off, it's not going to be quite as good. But using a credit card will keep things active and keep things churning. But again, if you use it wisely, and I mean paid off in full every month, you know, it's not going to hurt you at all, and it'll help maintain that credit. And again, getting started using a credit card, you know, I always tell my students that here's the way to do it. You always, and this is a rule of thumb with credit cards, it's so important. Always use a credit card for something that is in your budget. Okay, it's in your budget, you know you'll be able to pay it off. If you start using a credit card to buy stuff that you want, that you don't have enough money for, that's the trap you fall into. And as long as you make the payments on time, at least the minimum payment, it's certainly not going to hurt your credit score unless you've maxed it out. But if you keep the amount under 30% of your limit, it's not going to hurt. But what it is going to hurt is your wallet, because you're going to be paying the interest. So the best way to do that is, yeah, pay things in cash when you can, but use a credit card too. And that'll keep your credit churning and keep that report in pretty good shape.
Thank you. That was very helpful, and hopefully that answered your questions. Do we have any more questions for Jerry? This is, wow, so much information. Any other questions?
It's a fascinating
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a fascinating subject, and nobody really knows exactly how it works. I mean, obviously, the people who came up with the algorithm that turns the information on your credit report into a number, they know how it works. But as far as the individual person, you know, there are things you shouldn't do, is like paying late bills and things like that. But, you know, people will come up to me and say, I'm doing everything right. My score is not where I think it should be. Well, you know, it's not an exact science. You have to look at all and make sure, of course, as I said before, and this is so important, I'm going to repeat it again, you should be checking your report once a year at least to take a look at what's on it. And the other reason, Selena, you want to be checking that report is because that's where identity theft will show up in many cases. Just to give you a quick example, I know we're running out of time here, but say, for instance, somebody gets your information. Who knows how they get it? It might be a company breach, but they get your information and they decide they're going to open up a cell phone account in your name. So they open up the account, they use your name, your information, and then they change the address so the bill doesn't go to you, it goes somewhere else, and they use the phone until the company gets sick of not getting paid. You know, they turn the phone off. In the meantime, the crooks just dump it, and this goes on your credit report. Now, you have no idea that this has happened, and you won't know until you go in to apply for a loan and your credit report is worse than you think it should be. So that's another thing you look at, and that's why you want to make sure that your credit report is accurate.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to say thank you for that at all, because I was going to sleep really, but now I'm not, maybe not so much.
Just look at your report.
So I will. We have one more question out there. Actually, two questions. Christian has a question that says, what's the first step to fixing credit?
First step is knowing what's on your credit report. So that means you have to take a look at your credit report and see what's there and make sure, as I said before, that it's all accurate. Now, it may not be accurate. If it's not accurate, then you dispute the inaccuracies. If it is accurate, then you take a look at it. What are you going to do? Okay, which one are you going to tackle first? You want to go back to the bad information, the information that's causing your report to be bad. What bills haven't I paid? Do I want to call the collectors and say, okay, are you willing to work with me on this? I am trying to fix my credit. Will you be able to maybe take a little bit less, make an offer, see if they'll take it? But here's the caveat to that. Make sure if you do make an offer and they accept it, that they give it to you in writing, okay? That they say this has been paid in full in writing to you so you have it. Because once they get your money, they're not that anxious to do anything for you. So make sure they give it to you in writing. The other thing they can do, and it doesn't hurt to ask, is they can take it completely off your report, like it's not even there, okay? The other thing to keep in mind is that the derogatory information becomes less important as time goes by, and eventually will drop off your credit report, okay? And for instance, I think it's somewhere around 6.5 years, the statute of limitations, it'll drop off your report. Now, a bankruptcy is a little bit different. That stays on your report for 10 years. And I think some of the government stuff, they never give up, so that'll never come off your report. But again, you take a look at one step at a time. What am I going to take care of now? Okay, once you take care of that, you move on to the next thing. In the meantime, and this is really important, you need to keep what's going on current. In other words, if you've got loans, you got a car loan, make sure you pay it every month. If you've got a mortgage, make sure you pay it every month, because that's the most important part of your credit report. Now, here's a little fact for you. A lot of people wonder what causes the most problems on credit reports. Well, the answer is medical debt. Medical debt. Because if something bad happens to you and you don't have good insurance, you could be $200,000-$300,000 in debt overnight. So medical debt is often what causes people to have credit problems. And that's just something you have to work on.
That's fascinating. And that there again, that's another scary thing that we don't really realize, between the people stealing our identity, like you said, and medical debt. That's fascinating. We do have one last question from Anthony, and he's wondering, does freezing your credit prevent this?
Actually, that's a good question, Anthony. And that is something that a lot of people like to do, and they've made it much easier to do that. Freezing your credit is a great option. It's easy to do. It doesn't cost anything. You do it through the 3 credit bureaus. In fact, I think it's right at the top of their pages that tell you how to do that. And what you do is you freeze your credit. What that means is nobody can take out a loan in your name if your credit's frozen. So you freeze your credit with the 3 bureaus, and then if somebody gets your information and tries to, say, open up a cell phone account or take out a loan in your name, of course, they're going to whoever's giving you the loan or giving you the service will go to the credit bureau and try to check your report. If it's frozen, they can't do it. So that'll stop a lot of fraud. And again, if you need to get a loan yourself, what you have to do is go and unthaw the credit. And that's not that big a deal anymore. So yeah, that's not a bad idea. If you're worried about identity theft, not a bad idea at all to freeze your credit reports.
Yeah, Jerry, there was another thing that happened when my dad died. For all those folks that have parents, all the credit, not only was it immediately canceled, but it was all transferred to collection agencies without an opportunity for anyone to pay them off. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. That's, again, sometimes you have to be proactive and go and approach the creditors and say, listen, the estate is going to pay this, but...
Yeah, it happened automatically, though. I'm just putting this out for everyone else. It happened the instant that the death was recorded. All the credit cards were shut down. All the debt was transferred to a collection agency. There was no opportunity for intervention. It was automatic and instant.
Boy, that's really strange.
Yeah, it was the whole thing was
yeah,
misery. Anyway, okay, I got to be quiet. It's time.
Okay, thanks, Anthony.
Wow, this has been another wonderful, presentation. And Jerry, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise. I mean, I know I learned so much. It's just amazing. I really didn't realize there were so many different parts to understanding credit scores. So I thank you again so very much for sharing your time and expertise with us. I'd also like to thank our North Country Community College Foundation for helping us to enhance and maintain a quality education and experiences for our students and communities. I want to give a big shout out to the Opportunity to Share Committee who has started this kind of outreach to the communities and helped to bring great presenters like Jerry, to all of us in our communities. A great shout out to the enrollment department, especially Marissa, for helping us maintain and watch those chats and send all those forms in that you filled out. But most importantly, I want to thank all of you for taking your time this evening to join us, spend time with us, and to learn. It's great when we can all learn together. We have an exciting month coming up. Next month in August, we will be looking at history, and we will be looking at Black history in the Adirondacks. We have great lectures about Timbuktu, John Brown, and different places and the names of places within our area. So please, if you haven't done so already and you're interested, please go to our North Country Live page and click on the lectures or presentations that you would like to see. So again, thank you everyone, and especially Jerry, thank you again so very much. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening, everybody, and enjoy the upcoming weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.